Well, welcome back to a new episode of Conversations with Cohen. I'm very excited to have my guest Frank Carone with me, who boy has accomplished so much in his life, from being in the military to being an attorney and then working in New York City government. But as we start, and as we always do at the beginning of every podcast, I'd love, Frank, for you to introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, thank you, Gregg, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And my name is Frank Carone, and I was Chief of Staff to 110th Mayor of the City of New York, Eric Adams. I had the pleasure of being part of the team running his campaign, going back to when he ran for Senate. I was able to do that. I was we call in the nomenclature the law chair, Democratic Party in Kings County, which is the largest Democratic county in the United States. And I learned under incredible political leaders. I got to know then candidate for Senate, Eric Adams. He was a police officer then. And him, like many others, along the way, we got a chance to strategize their campaigns and work together as a Democratic team in County of Kings. And it was an incredible privilege to do so. Also was fortunate to join a law firm of Abrams Fensterman. And I got very close to the managing partner. We're like, to this day, we consider ourselves like brothers, Howard Fensterman. And when we merged our offices together, Brooklyn was sort of not a place that many mid-sized law firms were looking to plant their flag, so to speak. The law firm had about 30 lawyers, mainly in Long Island. And I'm happy to say, putting our efforts together and making Brooklyn our sort of footprint and embracing the evolving nature of the borough and the thriving business and diverse population, we became the largest law firm in the history of the borough with 130 lawyers. And it's been symbiotic every step of the way. The law firm has been supportive of our efforts. And we, as a result, we're fortunate to represent and got to know a myriad of entrepreneurs throughout the borough and really throughout the city at large. So I've had a interesting career, one that I'm proud of, and I don't think I'm just done yet. And I'm still looking to bring value to other colleagues and friends along the way.
Well, as you know, this podcast is many listeners are business owners, folks who are very much at different phases of their journey as their businesses are evolving, and I know through your experience, you've gained a lot of insight as to the do's and don'ts and the right ways and the successes of business owners and what they can do to set themselves up for the future. So what I'd love to start with really is if you rewind the clock, what you learned from in the Marines and what sort of that taught you as it's applicable to business.
Oh, wow. What a great question. It was, I just got to step back a little further. We were sharing our story offline, Gregg, but, growing up in the streets of Canarsie, you learned a sense of grit. You learned a sense of authenticity and credibility to survive in a way that you were able to build a foundation of character. So I had the tenets of that growing up in such a neighborhood. But then in the Marine Corps, you really learned how to overcome perceived limitations. And it was enormously rewarding for me to push myself beyond what I thought my limitations were, both physically and mentally. And I recollect a story where it was best exemplified when I was studying for the bar exam after graduating officers candidate school. And, many of the students were very stressed, like you'd imagine they'd be preparing for the bar exam. It's a stressful time for many students. But I remember saying to myself, I'm reading books in the library. this is not that difficult. And I was using the perspective of battlefield and preparing your mindset for battlefield, just like you'd prepare your mindset for a struggle with an illness. So when you keep that perspective, whether it's an internal personal issue through illness, or whether it's really trying to consider yourself in the mindset of the battle, it allowed me the perspective to never get flustered and always keep my bearing, despite whatever obstacle was in front of me. So I remember being very relaxed, preparing for the bar exam, so much so that I went to the movies the night before the bar exam, and I just knew I was passing, and I felt very prepared mentally because of the training I learned in the United States Marine Corps. Incredible experience.
I'm wondering, as you were saying that, and those obstacles that you thought you couldn't overcome, was there anything that comes to mind now of some of those obstacles that you just thought were too large to tackle as you were going through, officer?
Yeah. Our platoon started with about 60. Our company started with about 60 candidates, and we graduated about 19 or 20. But what prepped me for that was a recruiter named Captain Samuels, and I had asthma as a child, so it was always a little more difficult for me to do endurance activities. But although I outgrew it, the rules of the military then, when I applied, was that if you had asthma as a child, you were disqualified. So I was originally disqualified after going through my first physical. And Captain Samuel just looked at me and said, "We're not giving up. We're going to persevere. We're going to appeal, and you're going to work hard, and we're going to get you into the program." And at first I thought, it was not meant to be for whatever reasons. And Captain Samuel really, that first instance of really seeing that Marine tenacity to overcome that initial obstacle. And then while in training, I remember the first day, it sticks out at me so vividly. We're still in our civilian clothes, except we had our utility belts on, and we just start sprinting uphill and in the Marine Corps, you don't do a leisurely jog. It is an absolute sprint, and you say to yourself, "I'll never make it at this pace," because we're really running as fast as you can uphill, and it's designed on purpose that way, to see who is going to quit early, knowing what is ahead of you. And it's just incredibly rewarding when you finish and you say you didn't think you were able to. So those experiences, that I don't always think of them, but your questions bring back those memories, and they've stood with me, and they've helped me really in Marine Corps, you call it bearing under fire. And I've used that many, many times, whether as a lawyer, certainly in City Hall, when there's a lot of incoming and a lot of chaos, but you stay calm, you stay focused on the question in front of you, and tackle them one at a time. And a lot of that comes back to, as I said, my upbringing in Canarsie section of Brooklyn. And of course, nothing was like the training in the Marine Corps.
And so, Frank, you had mentioned here you had all of these different life experiences that added up to be able to help you in business. Now, one of those things that then made me think, well, one of the culmination of a lot of that experience was this book you wrote that you co-authored, Everyone Wins. How did the book come about?
It's a great, interesting question. The book is essentially modeled around the power of relationships and the power of finding common ground. That's sort of the first time that really stood out in my mind was one of my first appearances as a criminal defense lawyer in the early 90s. I was in front of a judge, and he calls me up to the bench I was a defense attorney with the assistant DA, and he said, counsel approached me and he said, "You know who the best lawyers are?" And here I am, a first-year lawyer, and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And we both look up and say, no. He goes, "The one with the clients." And it dawned on me, he's right. Having the clientele, the relationships, is what puts you in a position to have experiences, to perform and excel, and to then continue to build off of that. So I've always had the mindset of cherishing relationships. Many of mine go back many, many decades. And in addition, I've always been a very voracious reader. So I was reading a book one time called Bargaining Brilliance. And in the prologue, the author, I think his name was Louis Schiff, talks about one of his business mentors, a fellow named Russ Prince, who lives in this compound in Connecticut, but grew up in gritty Canarsie. So of course, you could appreciate, my antennas go up and I email Russ from the book. He responds within 2 seconds. And we meet together over breakfast in Midtown, New York City. And we started a relationship of writing, collaborating, all around the idea of relationships. And I remember the first thing we discussed, a concept we called Nordell networking, where the nodule, and you list out 5, 10 influential folks in your, either that you already know or you aspire to know, but most likely that you already know. And then you embrace them to sort of help you build your own network and referral-based business. And so we started collaborating along those lines of always writing down our plan, having a system of measuring those results, following up, all stemming from the power of relationships. And only from there can you really build meaningful businesses, because no person can do things alone. But you can't even do that without the processes that we talk about in the book, which is credibility, integrity, finding common ground, and doing so through really, really intensive listening rather than speaking over people, but listening and taking in what you're hearing, understanding such that the person really feels you're getting their goals, their issues, their fears, their successes, and then offering value-added advice.
I think there's something there with this Nordell network that I've never heard of. I imagine others may not have heard of. So can we talk a little bit in more detail about that? And also perhaps you can share from your own life experience how that was applicable and what the benefits of that were over time.
Sure. The best way I like to describe it, people like validation for their decisions for the most part, right? It's part of human nature. That's why you'll hear, friends and colleagues use my barber, or go to this restaurant, you're going to love it, ask for the maitre d', or go on this vacation because it was really great. So it was something you've done that now you're seeking validation by recommending, right? So there are people who are naturally referral sources. They're just always advising, whether they're giving you a lawyer to use, whether they're giving you a certain podcast to go on, a book to read, something like that. So in the Nordell networking philosophy, you identify folks in your network that through them you could exponentially grow because they're referral sources themselves. It's by their very nature. But it takes a real conscious thought and trial and error. Not everybody's going to do that. I like to think I'm one of those people that if I'm in your orbit, I'm constantly recommending doctors or restaurants or lawyers or elected officials to support. And through me, you'll then exponentially expand your network, Gregg, if it was you and I talking. So I'd be in that nodule, and from there, you could break out 5 or 10. You can't do 100. You name, and it may evolve, and your 3 may fall off, 2 may come back on. But you do it consciously through individuals in your own network. Now, if you're new and you're young and you're building it, not to be dismayed, you just start making sure that you cherish each and every relationship, and you do so by being credible, by using integrity every step of the way, and do not view every negotiation as a zero-sum game, because it's not. Play the long game always. And as a result, you'll have relationships over a period of time, and then you'll have this network that you can then create your own sort of Nordell network around. And it really worked for me when as I said earlier about Abrams Fensterman, we joined a law firm and became the largest in Brooklyn. I remember sitting with Russ in 2010, my co-author, and I listed out about 10, 20 individuals that I really was going to market our legal services to. And you do that through lunches, through breakfast, through dinners, through socializing, through golf, through whatever. And you do it regularly and you do it continuously. So that's essentially what I mean by that.
I guess so. A couple of things come to mind from that, which is, do you get the sense that that most people look at helping as sort of a tit for tat, rather, the idea of everyone wins, right? As you've experienced people through your life, was it eye-opening for people to see this way of approaching?
Yeah, yes, and there is. You can, again, it depends how you look at the world, right? And it's not at all a negative. And the reason is because you can't expect something in return.
No.
That's the piece that I should have said a little clearer. It is without expectation. And it is without a tit for tat. It is without you owe me, because
it is the concept of giver's gain, right? You put out into the world, you do good things, you help people, you live a good life, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
And you have to be, you have to have a strong self-esteem to do that, because if you're always counting and thinking, oh, I didn't get back what I gave to a relationship, you're going to be a very unhappy person and disappointed often. So if you remove that psychological, potential problem, and you, as you said, give to gain, and you do it with absolute authenticity, it's amazing the results you'll get back, because people want to be around people that bring value to their life. And if you act with such a way that you don't expect something in return, but you're genuinely bringing value, and sometimes value is just me listening to you carefully about your family, about your needs, and you're enjoying the fact that I'm being empathetic to you, and I'm giving you some sounding board to critique and maybe think of things a different way. So there's many ways of looking at it, but never with an expectation. So that kind of removes that negative connotation that may be out there, but not necessarily is negative. But I understand that there's that, hey, it seems a little bit deceptive to manipulate relationship. That's not at all what we're saying.
No,
we're saying
that was very clear.
Value accretion.
What stood out for me in the book is your grasp of many entrepreneurs who embark on their journeys to try to, with the goal of creating massive amounts of wealth. I thought that was an interesting perspective, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about where that comes from, and what the experiences that you've had working with entrepreneurs, and at what stages it's been able to offer that insight.
Well, if I understand the question correctly, what drove me and still drives me, and I think drives many people as it relates to, besides just the enjoyment of creating, is freedom. Financial freedom is a powerful thing where you'd be able to. There are many authors who say the greatest form of love is being able to bestow things upon your loved ones, and that's whether it's food, clothing, shelter, whatever. So freedom to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, is the greatest success you could have in life. So in order to do that, and that also differs per person, but what I'm trying to accomplish through our writings and our speaking is for people to have a larger imagination of what's possible. And you'll never get out of sort of middle class, if you will. Nothing wrong with that. But if you are an entrepreneur and you want to, and this is your goal, you really need a larger imagination on how to do things. Don't sell yourself short by what I would call the salary trap or the pay. And that sort of brings you back to that, what am I getting from something versus a larger opportunity ahead of you. So that is what we are sort of a little bit alluding to when we're talking about amassing, large, I guess, sources of wealth.
So what you just said resonated with me with regards to people not thinking big enough, and I'm wondering what you found has been the biggest source of those limitations. Why don't people dream big enough, think big enough?
I just think that their fear of losing. I believe that they think the supply is limited. They think that you know there's some game behind entrepreneurship. But being seriously wealthy is a really a mindset. And I learned early on in the real estate industry where you could either invest in or develop, let's say, a 2 to 4 family unit, hypothetical. The same work and energy that's going to go into that 4 family unit is in a 400 person unit with a management team. So now the mindset is, why waste energy on a 4, no disrespect of the smaller units, but my point is, if you're looking for larger reward, larger freedom, then you could deploy the same techniques just in a larger universe. Why? The truth of the matter is, I think it's a shame that more people don't think larger. And I think it's a matter of educating our youth, both from college, both through social media. And I think there's not enough attention given towards entrepreneurship and creative growth in this country at the moment as necessary. And I'm hoping that'll change, and I'm starting to get a little hope that it would, because really we have the greatest opportunity in the world right now, right here.
For those who haven't read the book, I'm wondering what you think the biggest surprise is to those after they read it. Like, what is the biggest either pushback or the biggest aha moment for someone in your experience after reading it?
I think it's going to be that business is not a zero-sum game and not a cutthroat winner take all. It is far from that. It is the actual polar opposite. And this book has not some philosophical treatise, which stood the test of time through our clientele, through ourselves, and by genuinely looking for common ground, while of course serving your interests. Let's not mistake here. And the whole methodology here is advancing your interest while also doing your very, very best in an ethical way to advance the interest of those that you're comporting yourself with and doing business with. And I think that may be surprising to some, because most think that business is not like that. It is a zero-sum game. It is a winner take all, and who is the most deceptive or the most aggressive necessarily wins. You've probably heard often young people or who are argumentative and say, my mother said I should have been a lawyer, or you should have been a lawyer because you're argumentative. And argumentative doesn't necessarily mean effectiveness. It's the opposite of that. It's convincing another side that serving your interest also serves their own.
And frankly, when you push back to somebody, all you do is put them on the defense, and actually you push them further away.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think that's, I don't think that this is a novel idea, but I think, to your question, I think people may find that pleasantly surprising.
And then, so now you've got a new book coming out, correct? Which delves deeper into this topic. Could you share with us a little bit about?
It's the same. It's going to be Everyone Wins Volume 2, and we have everyonewinsbook.com. It is a slight evolution with stronger case studies from our first version, and hearing back from our clients and friends who enjoyed the book, and we kind of bridge the gap a little more in the intersection of legal, political, and regulatory issues. So we then deploy the same methodology of tactical empathy, of listening attentively to find common ground for many, many startup entrepreneurs that may not really be aware of how to bridge the gap from procurement, how to potentially, procure business through a variety of governments. So we just bring the same message a little more evolved based on our life's experiences.
And what do you think, from all of these businesses that you've seen at various stages, what do you think the biggest mistakes that businesses make as they are starting to grow?
Burn bridges, stand on ceremony, have ego block the advancement of the goal of the business.
So it really is talking exactly to what this book is about, which is not getting that that it doesn't have to be that way. That really you win, when you're working towards a common goal, and frankly, that's the right way to be. Right? I understand.
And it's self-fulfilling, Gregg, because it's very easy to feel victimized and want to lash out. But if you're in the world of business and you're playing the long game, very often many of those folks that you felt you were lashing out against for your reasons that are maybe personal or whatever, may know someone else that you're presently doing business with, and they may block, because most people do not want to work with someone who potentially is difficult.
Right.
So that's really critically important in my estimation.
So you've talked a lot about your clients, and we haven't talked yet about Oak Tree Solutions. So I'm hoping you can help me help us understand how Oak Tree Solutions came about and how you what the genesis of that is.
It was almost a natural continuation of my work as a lawyer. I was fortunate enough to represent the state of New York, and the Attorney General had conflicts almost 12 times as a litigator. I worked with a variety of clientele who had issues with government. We've litigated against governments, and we realized why was this happening? What was the reason for litigation with the government, litigation for or against, when really someone or some organization is trying to advance something, right? So when I left City Hall, rather than put back on my lawyer hat, I just decided to be a little more creative with the work and be more in the consultant arena, strategizing the intersection between legal, regulatory, and political, because we're in such a hyper-regulated society. These disciplines overlap on almost every issue. And I can't tell you how many times when I was chief of staff, where I was taxi limousine commissioner, I was being lobbied, a lobbyist would fail to address the general counsel's concern, who's listening over my shoulder and only thinking about the policy concern, or only talking about the policy concern and not the political overlay. So because I was have this, I think, variety of experience, both as a lawyer and in government and out, I see the sort of relationship and interrelationships of all those three. And I thought it would be a lot of fun to use that experience to, bring down barriers for firms and clients, both starting or perhaps an intractable problem. They don't realize why they're stuck. And it's using those creative energies is very fun and rewarding.
So, what would be some examples of how situations where businesses could use your organization? If you could sort of.
Yeah, sure. Look, I'll give an example. So we have a variety of tech startups. Now, a tech startup is very difficult to break into government procurement, because government by its nature doesn't like change. Bureaucratic, reality being what it is, you don't get rewarded for trying something new, and you get brutally criticized if it goes wrong. So the barrier is very, very high. So you have to have a certain amount of credibility, both with the general counsels of an agency, to get them to first listen with an open mind on a potential new idea. The politics have to be aligned with whoever's elected at the moment. So you have to make sure you're very, very, very aware of not the politics as you think that they are perceived, but how they actually are, and then what the present regulations are. So we then take new tech startups and we'll say, okay, here's how you should create your narrative. Here are the professionals you need. Maybe you need a little bit of an online campaign so the message gets out. Maybe you need a lobbyist, which I don't do, to sort of, analyze the potential local laws you have to overcome or change. And then you need to package it all together into a campaign. It's interesting because, look, what are campaigns but selling a message? Same thing in business. So we bring that same campaign type messaging to organizations, both profit and not-for-profits.
A great segue, because a question that I wanted to ask you was with regards to the City of Yes. Now, that's a campaign that you were intimately involved in developing. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, the City of Yes became a real estate initiative, a rezoning initiative that First Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer and Great Dan Garodnick as DCP chair were able to champion. But the name and the messaging started very much with the mayor himself when he was campaigning, and we were messaging that the agencies should not be working in silos, conflicting with one another, but working or at least doing the best that they can to work together towards mutual goals, and doing so from a start of yes, versus what you typically hear is a no. This is not the way we've done it before. This is not, the way that we think it should be done. But starting with an open mind, and we created the administration of Yes, ultimately evolved into the rezoning platform called City of Yes. But the mayor really campaigned on that, and that was a big part of our messaging, breaking down the silos in the agencies. And I think the president now is doing a little bit of the same, breaking down the bureaucracy and making sure that at the end of the day they serve the people. Is what the whole point of government is, to serve people, not to say no, not to preserve your job. Although of course everyone is concerned about not making mistakes to jeopardize their job, but you can't forget the core mission of government, which is to serve people. And you can't serve people unless you're open-minded and saying yes, at least to the idea, and then seeing if it could work legally, politically, regulatorily. But you start with an open mind towards novel ideas, and that's how progress is made.
And is that how sounds like Get Stuff Done was also sort of at the same time in parallel with that, or is that a different?
Exact same thing. Just another cliche. But it was all about doing things, getting things. And we were able to move some really important initiatives that were intractable before that, such as Willard's Point, first ever privately funded soccer stadium, 2,500 units of affordable housing, infrastructure build out, environmental cleanup, a project that was stalled for several decades, Kibbs Bay Life Science Hub, a city-state collaboration of $1.6 billion, which is a sanitation garage before, and now you're going to have kindergarten through workforce development collaborating. And those initiatives would be difficult without a culture of getting things done, City of Yes. However, whether a phrase you want to give to it, those are just phrases, but the core messaging is delivering results. Closing Fifth Avenue in Midtown and creating a larger pavilion for pedestrians and retail. All these things were a result of getting stuff done as codified by the mayor and our administration.
As I'm listening to you speak and I'm thinking about where you've come from and all the different roles that you've had, um, while as an attorney, you were building a business. I understand that, but Oak Tree Solutions is you became an entrepreneur. Um, you then went out and built something from scratch. So I'd love to hear from you what some of the biggest surprises that you've experienced, um, knowing what you know from all of your life that may be more of a challenge than you had anticipated.
The greatest challenge is making sure that you keep your team motivated and dedicated to the core mission at all times, and removing ego and ancillary egocentric issues that block progress. That is the by far the greatest challenge I think I've come across. The work itself, the procurement of the work, the generating of the work is, yes, challenging, but you can't minimize how a toxic environment, and you only get toxicity when you have folks who are insecure or egocentric. So removing that is always a daily challenge, and we're all human beings, and we all have some days we feel good, we're happy, and some days we're not. So managing that and not allowing those peaks and valleys to sort of affect a culture is, I think, to me, something that you have to constantly be conscious of and work towards.
Well, I was going to ask you, so how do you think, or what have you done? What tools have you had in your tool belt to be able to keep people focused on that core mission of yours?
The best the best tool, I think, is example. Goes back to one of the things we touched on at the beginning of our conversation. Maintaining calmness always, regardless of disappointment, regardless of setbacks, regardless of adversaries, staying poised, calm, and present. Presence is a great word. I remember Judge Lippman giving a great speech talking about, as a lawyer, to always have presence, but it's not limited to lawyers. I think having presence in any environment sort of engenders confidence, and you must maintain that poise and presence regardless, because there will be significant setbacks always, whether they're unforeseen lawsuits, maybe press that's not going the way that you'd like it to go. It doesn't matter. You just stay focused, you stay calm, and by doing that, it's infectious to your staff. But if you overreact, if you get emotional, that's also infectious. So that's how I do it. I think I try to, I'm not saying I always do it well. I'm not saying I don't slip sometimes. I do.
It's a work in progress, Frank.
It's a work in progress. But the first part of it, is being mindful that you have to continually try your best to stay calm, always.
Well, I'm watching the clock, and our time is coming close to an end. But I'd love to give you the floor, just in case there's anything that any message that you'd like to share, or anything that that you feel like we may not necessarily have touched on as you're talking to entrepreneurs about their upcoming journeys.
Well, what I would say, two things. Whether you're young or older or in between, the process is learnable. The process we write about and Everybody Wins is a learnable process. It's an application that you don't have to be born with a certain gift. It may come easier for some than others, but it is eminently learnable by everyone. And with a certain mindset to build on relationships for the rest of your life, you will be surprised how rewarding that would be. And it is learnable, so don't believe ever that this is some unique talent that only lies with the select few. That is not the case. And I encourage folks to really read, whether it's my book or others, but anything that is built on credible relationship building is going to be incredibly rewarding to whatever business you're in. And second, a little more granular, if you are in the business where you interact with government, be mindful of sort of like a Venn diagram, legal, regulatory, political, and how all three intersect. Don't speak just to your lawyer. Don't speak just to your lobbyist. Don't speak just to your partner. But you really need to step back. And every time you're dealing with government, however you're dealing with government, remember those three: intersection, legal, regulatory, and political. They don't live separate. They live very much together and overlap with one another. And any one of the three can stop progress on whatever project you may be working on, and it could cause frustration. So be mindful of that three-headed monster.
And how do people get in touch with you, Frank?
So the book website is everyonewinsbook.com, and go on that site. And of course, you could always just Google me. I'm short of articles, that's for sure.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing some of the insights that from your life experience. I know there's a lot that we've been able to gain just from this, and this is before anyone's even unpeeled this book. And by the way, thank you for my copy. I really enjoyed reading it. And this has been an episode of Conversations with Cohen. And thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Frank. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Gregg.